Dasaratha said, "O sage, tell me where that mendicant, bhikshu, is meditating, and I shall at once dispatch my soldiers to wake him up from his meditation and bring him here." We're in the court of King Dasaratha. He doesn't often say anything, but here he tells Vasishta that he'll send his soldiers to go and find the bhikshu, whose meditation is so powerful that his thought forms apparently materialize. Vasistha replied, "O king, that mendicant's body has already become lifeless and it cannot be revived." He was undergoing a 21-day meditation, and it seems like this was some final kind of meditation. His jiva had attained enlightenment and liberation. It cannot be subjected to the experience of this world appearance anymore. His own attendants stand outside his cottage, waiting to open the door at the end of 1 month, as instructed by him. They will find that by that time he has abandoned his body, and will then install someone else in his place. It's a bit like a retreat centre. There might be a meditation hall where everybody meditates. The monks might have their own cells where they'll get on with private meditation. But then there'll be special places where the monks are essentially locked away, isolated, to pursue some very deep and thorough practice. But there seems to be a rather macabre element to this. This is where they go to finish things off. Anyway, this Maya, or world appearance or delusion, is of the nature of limited and limiting qualities and attributes. It is said to be impossible to cross it by ignorance, but by the knowledge of truth it is easily crossed over. So this is all about freeing ourselves from our notions of an external world and an individual personality. It is wrong perception that sees a bracelet in gold. There's only the gold, the bracelet's a pattern. What we get caught up with is patterns. The mind is excellent at creating patterns. This is what science is, this is what mathematics is. It's looking for patterns, it's all about patterns. Are patterns real things? Well, they actually provide our reality. But then what we say is the patterns are real, the patterns are concrete. It's like a rainbow. Is a rainbow a real thing? We can all see it, we can photograph it. You can have two people looking at the same position from different angles. One of them will see the rainbow and one won't. So a rainbow is dependent on where you're looking at it from, the angle you're looking at it from. But then so is everything else. My reality is only dependent on the fact that I'm perceived from a certain distance. If you look at me from too far away, you won't see me. If you look at me close up with your eyes right against my nose or cheek, if you don't want to damage yourself, you won't see me either. The body is a pattern which apparently has a completely different physical constitution every 7 years. There's no substance in my body that was here 8 years ago. It's a pattern. It's all patterns which we assume to have concrete reality. The mere appearance becomes the cause for such wrong perception. This Maya, unreal appearance, is but a figure of speech. The appearance has the same relation to the Supreme Self that a wave has to the ocean. We need to ask ourselves, what are the patterns arising within? What are the patterns of? And we don't answer that conceptually because that's just another notion. We need to see for ourselves what they are patterns of. When one sees this truth, the appearance ceases to be a delusion. So the appearance becomes real. This is the point that was made at the end of the previous chapter. All this is relatively real, not totally unreal. We must be careful not to dismiss everything as illusion. so that we still have the appearance, but it's not a deluded appearance. It is as it is. It is on account of ignorance that this long dream world appearance appears to be real. Thus does the jiva come into being. But when the truth is realized, it is seen that all this is the self. Whatever be the notion that one entertains, it is the self alone that appears as that notion. Self is what gives rise to the patterns. This universe is the result of the notions thus entertained by countless such individuals. Well, even individuals are notions. Notions give rise to notions. We live in an ocean of notions. The original notion entertained by Brahma has come to be experienced by the jiva as a solid reality. And Brahma too is a notion. But when one attains the purity of consciousness similar to that of Brahma, one sees all this as a long dream. It is a notion of the object that becomes the mind, and thus slips from infinite consciousness. When we've got the notion that there are real things, real objects, which a real personality can enter into engagement with, then we've entered into limited consciousness. It then undergoes varied experiences. But is this mind independent of the Supreme Self? Is not the Supreme Self the mind too? The jiva, the body, and all the rest of it are but reflections or appearances of the Supreme Self. All these movements, etc., happen in the one infinite consciousness, which is forever infinite and consciousness, not else. Movements, etc., are imaginary expressions. There is neither motion nor non-motion, neither one nor many. What is as it is. Consciousness is unchanging. When this is realized, it's like you're identifying with the still depths of the ocean. But there's all this stuff going on which consciousness can identify with, and this is the apparent movement of the waves. Waves don't move. There's nothing physical on a wave that moves. Well, not in the way we think that it does anyway. There are patterns going on. We can identify with these patterns, or we can identify with what these patterns are arising within. Diversity arises in the unawakened state, and it vanishes when one commences one's inquiry. The inquirer exists, but without any doubt, which indeed is the supreme state. Inquiry is self-inquiry. The ultimate point of inquiry, when looking into the nature of things, is to look into the inquirer. Look into what is looking into the nature of things. And this is the supreme state. Peace is known as the world. Peace alone is as this world appearance. This is how we can be in the world, realizing our essential nature, not separate from the world, but as a reflection of the world, realizing that this is what the world arises within. We might wonder, well, if the essential nature is peace, why is the world not at peace? Well, this is like saying, well, the essential nature of the deep ocean is calmness, and yet there can be a storm raging on the surface. So we need to be careful with that kind of questioning, which can seem rather naive and limiting. Ignorance is unreal. There is neither the seer, the seen, nor the sight. There's only the seeing, really. The mind imagines a defect in the moon. It is not there as defect. It's basically some kind of double vision. And that double vision is not the fault of the object as being perceived as double. The infinite consciousness has consciousness alone as its body, or manifestation, or appearance. And this is the supreme state, consciousness realizing itself. And this is the practice of the self-inquirer. The practice is to keep turning the awareness to itself, so that awareness is its own body, and not whatever the awareness is outwardly turning to.